Hello, we're from this Jaden's Videos, and today I am reviewing a new for Halloween 2021 animatronic sold at Spirit Halloween for $299.99. This is Mr. Howle, a truly stunning animatronic for sure, and obviously one of my favorites of the year. I mean, he's a werewolf, he kind of has to be. So there's a lot to talk about with this guy. I picked him up at Spirit Halloween almost a week ago, and I couldn't be happier. He's definitely one of my favorites of the year. I would say he's honestly my second favorite, right behind Grimm, which is surprising that the werewolf isn't my favorite of the year, but I think Grimm just takes the cake for me. But Mr. Howle is a close second. I absolutely love him. There's a lot to talk about with this guy, a lot to know, a lot to see, and so we're just going to jump right into the review. Like I said, this is a new for 2021 Spirit Halloween animatronic, so you can pick it up. You can either order it online, you can pre-order it because it's not fully in stock online yet on Spirit Halloween's website, or you can go to your local Spirit Halloween store and pick him up there, as he is one of the first shipments in stores, which is where I got mine and where I know a lot of other people are getting theirs, because he is one of the first shipments. So more than likely your local Spirit Halloween will have this guy in stock, and if they don't, they should have him soon because he's one of the first shipments of the season. With all of that out of the way, let's jump in to this absolutely phenomenal animatronic. First things first, I mean, just look at this guy. Just look at his face and all the magnificent detail in there. There's just so much to see. He's got so much texture to his face and everything. It's just really mind-blowing. It looks absolutely fantastic, and I'll try to raise you up here and give you a bit of a better view. I mean, just look at that face. Absolutely fantastic. He looks amazing. Which is one of the coolest things about him. His teeth are all yellowed and gnarly. He's got an awesome face sculpt there. His nose, his eyes look great. His eyes are one of the coolest things about him. His eyes just look so good. As you can see, I really love how the eyes on a lot of props now, especially this year, aren't just white eyes with LEDs behind them, or yellow or red or whatever. A lot of the eyes now actually have some really fantastic detail, which I think is good, because though I think light up eyes work on a lot of props, I think they don't, well, I shouldn't say that. I don't think light up, I said that wrong, I mean. I don't think light up eyes work on a lot of props, is what I meant to say. As in a haunt setting, light up eyes just aren't the best, because they take away from the realism. That is my personal opinion. You may differ, but light up eyes aren't the best in my opinion, unless it fits the character well. Now, for a prop like Mr. Howle, I prefer non-light up eyes. So here's the cool thing is, if you decide to take out his eye lights, then he still has some really awesome looking eyes, and that's something that I've really noticed about a lot of the new props, and it's something I really love. Just his whole face is so cool. You can see his ears look absolutely fantastic. I love those ears. He's got a lot of fur just framing his face here. And may I mention, because obviously one of the big selling points of this prop is how big he is. He is massive. I don't know if you remember, but in my flagship store tour, I said he's not as big as I expected him to be, but that's only because I think since we see so many big props nowadays, when someone says there's a big prop, you expect it to be even bigger. But then again, in stores, the props already look kind of small in a store like Flagship because the roof is so high. But when you get him home and you see how big he is enormous. I think he might be the biggest prop I own. I wouldn't say he's the tallest. However, he is the biggest in his size, in his proportions, and everything. And that is what makes him so cool. Because I think werewolves should be big characters. I think they should be around 7 feet tall and have gigantic proportions. And this is probably the biggest werewolf we've ever seen. And I think it's really the major selling point of this prop that makes him so cool. But there's so many other cool things about him, and that's why I'm going to move on with this review and talk about it. For his clothes, you've got the classic plaid shirt that a lot of werewolves have, obviously, and just look at that. Just look at that mouth. I wasn't even planning on focusing on the mouth in this shot, but dang, just look at how cool it is. The teeth and the gums are all glossy and everything. It's just so fantastic. You know what? I'm going to move on over here and just show you real quick. Look at how great that looks. just the detail in this prop is one of the major things that makes me love him so much. He's got an awesome looking tongue in there. A lot of props don't have a tongue. He's got a fantastic tongue. Just the glossy look on his teeth and his gums and everything. It's so fantastic. So you have his shirt here like I was talking about. And it's your basic plaid shirt that you usually see with werewolves. I would assume it's supposed to be a flannel. And I do like, because I know a lot of werewolves like Limb Ripper, he doesn't have rips in the shirt. I do like how this guy actually has rips in his shirt where his fur is showing through. I think that looks super cool. Moving on down to the hands, which are again another one of the most amazingly detailed parts of this prop. I will show you the other side of the hand as well, but just look at that. It's massive. I mean, here's a comparison here. It is absolutely enormous. Just his finger, I can wrap my hand around his whole finger. He is so big, and if you haven't seen him in person, or even more so, if you haven't seen him like in your house, you do not understand how big this prop is. When he's in the store next to other big props like Baphomet and stuff like that, you really can't tell. But when you actually see this guy, he's so big and I can't get over it. I mean, usually after I buy a big prop, after like a day or two, it kind of wears off and I get used to the height. I'm still astounded by the height of this guy. I mean, look at him. Or his just size in general. I'm going to move over here to the other side of his hand, which is definitely the coolest looking part. I love how much character this prop has, and I think that's one thing I really like about him, because one thing with werewolves, as much as I love werewolves, and of course they are my favorite Halloween monster, it is hard to give each individual werewolf its own character, as they're just werewolves. However, I feel like in this prop, they did that perfectly. They gave him a lot of character here, with just the position he's in, and how his hands here, you can see they're like in like a grabbing type of claw motion, which I think looks absolutely fantastic, and they're huge like I mentioned. You've got a little bit of fur up here, which I really like. I love all the fur they added on him. It really sells the idea that he's a nice, cool werewolf. But his hands just look absolutely fantastic, and you can see there's veins popping out. There's just so much detail. I just can't get over it. I know I keep repeating myself about that, but it's just because I can't get over how good this prop looks. His pants are just your basic, you know, prop pants, which are just the normal material, and they're just gray. I would have liked if, like the shirt, they included some rips and stuff in them, but they didn't, unfortunately. But we're going to move on down to the feet here, because the feet, just like the hands, look fantastic. I mean, those are huge too. They're absolutely enormous, which you would expect. You could see the fur. Again, they look similar to the hands in the way that they're detailed, but they're still just so amazing looking that I can't get over how cool they are. They're enormous, which is good. Fits the rest of the proportions of this guy, because like I keep saying, he's just a massive, massive animatronic. Now I'm going to give you a side view of him so you can see his posture, because I think that's one of the things I really like about him is his posture and everything. So I'm going to move to the side so you can see. Oh, this looks so cool. I love this view of him. As you can see, he's like hunched over here. And another thing I want to note is you see this fur up here is not attached to his head. His head stops right here. This fur is on his shirt. But I'm really glad that they included that, because it just makes it look like an extension of his neck there. Because the prop, as you can tell, he doesn't have a neck right here. But I don't see a problem with that, because it's supposed to be like, you know, he's hunched over. And this is supposed to look kind of like his neck, or the area that connects his back to his head, which is obviously his neck, but you know what I'm talking about. He looks super cool hunched over like that with his hands out. Oh, he looks so fantastic. And then when he moves, you really don't expect it. And he's terrifying. His animation is terrifying, which before I even activate him, I'm going to talk about his animation for a moment. The animation on this guy, like I mentioned, his height is a major selling point of him. Another major selling point is absolutely going to be the animation. The animation is flawless. I think it's one of the coolest animations they could have given to a werewolf. It's not startling, yet it's just as terrifying as a jump scare prop. I mean, I can only imagine. Like, even adults would probably be scared of this thing in a haunt, I'm sure. But I can only imagine, like, a little kid going up to this guy, and his animation, it's just so good, because basically, if you don't know what he does, I'm going to show you in just a moment, but just a little synopsis of it so you know what I'm talking about when I'm describing this. He basically leans back, his hands go up as he leans back, his head goes back as well, and he howls. But the way that his hands like reach forward is really intimidating and scary. And it's just, it's so hard these days because there's so many props and stuff and so many people are more used to them now. It's so hard for a prop that isn't a jump scare prop to be legitimately still scary. Yet this guy pulls it off so well with his size, his animation, the way he looks. He's honestly a very scary prop for sure. He's not just one where you look at it and you're like, oh wow, that's cool, which I see no problem with those props. I think props that are in haunts and make people look and be like, oh wow, that's really cool, like Harvester of Souls or like a big showcase prop. I love them. I have a lot of them and they're some of my favorite props. But I also think a prop that's able to make you say, oh wow, that's cool, and it's downright scary at the same time is just a big plus. And for a prop that's not a jump scare prop, that's usually pretty hard to do. Yeah, I think this guy does it perfectly. He is a very scary and intimidating prop in my opinion, and it's just one of the many, many reasons why I love him to death and I can't stop talking about him. Now, talking about the plus sides of him, I am going to get into the downside right before demoing him, just so you know when you hear the clicking in the demo. This guy is a very poor quality animatronic, which I'm not going to sugarcoat it, I'm just going to say it. He's poor quality. And it's not that... It's not like a prop where he's made poorly, like the poles are bad or the mechanism is bad. No. It's just that for some reason, there's a problem with this prop in almost every model of him where no one really knows the issue, but he has an issue where he tries to, if you saw his flagship videos, you probably know halfway through the day at flagship, the flagship one broke. He leans back and then he goes back down. He can't finish his whole animation. There's a lot of things that make me wonder what's going on. No one really knows for sure. It could be the control box overheating, or it could be the motor overheating. It could be just an issue with my big theory currently is that since his head is so large, and I noticed this when I set mine up, I actually had to cut the ties that held the wires in the head because of how large the head is. When he pulls back, the wires get pulled further into the head and they can't reach. So I had to cut the little zip tie that held it together for them to be able to reach. So one theory of mine is not that the wires are getting disconnected, but that the more it's pulling on them, the more disconnected they're getting from inside the control box itself. That's just a theory of mine, but I think it would make sense because that would tell why he can't finish his activation because they get pulled on. But I don't know, that's just a theory. I have heard rumors that Spirit is working on resolving the issue, so how they do that I'm not sure. Either they make a new batch of Mr. Howle's, which is unlikely, or they make a new control box or whatever the issue is, and if you tell them about that yours is having an issue, they'll send a new one to you. I don't know. However, I did notice one thing which is really interesting. Stores are the only places that have broken ones. No one who has bought a Mr. Howle has a broken Mr. Howle yet. So it could be the overheating problem. He's being plugged in too long and for some reason his control box can't take it. And so my advice to you, if you get Mr. Howle, to keep him lasting, and so far mine has lasted, knock on wood that he'll continue to do that, but to keep him lasting, keep him unplugged at all times unless you are actively using him. Just do it. We don't know if that's the problem, but just in case. Also, I heard there's a rumor to not use a step pad with him. I don't know if that's true, but until we know for sure, just take some precautions. Of course, also, be sure to take the spring off of this guy when you have him off if he's in the down position, because he is a spring-loaded prop, and props that have springs should always be kept in the up position or have their springs taken off when they're not activated. Personally, I don't really like how he looks when he's constantly in the up position. I'd rather have him like this. So if you want to have him like this, just take his spring off just to be safe, because that could be the issue. Really, until we know what the issue is for sure, just be cautious with this guy. But regardless of his quality quality, I took a gamble with him anyways and decided to get him with the hope that he continues to work just because I love him so much. So I think if you love him, don't be turned off by his quality, because keep in mind, no one who's bought him has a broken one yet. And just because there's poor quality on some of them doesn't mean yours is going to break. And if it does, you didn't waste $300 because you can easily just return it. So if you really like him, just go ahead and get him. Don't worry about the quality too much. Just hope that yours is fine. And if it's not, like I said, you didn't waste $300 because you can easily return it and get that money back. So I'm not going to return mine if it breaks. If mine breaks, I would either try to fix the problem, ask for help, or return it just for a new one. I'm never not going to have a Mr. Howle. If mine breaks, I'll return it for a new one, and then if that one breaks, I'll return it for a new one, and continue that cycle until the season ends, and then if I finally come out with a broken one, I'll use them as a static until next season. So that's how my cycle is going to go, but hopefully this one will last. I know this was a little bit of a long ramble before I activated him, but I just want to get those things out of the way just to help you guys get the best out of your Howle if you want to get him and make sure he doesn't break. But we are going to activate him now. He is one of the coolest animations ever, and mine does have an issue where he's clicking a little bit, but as long as that doesn't make him break, as long as it's not too big of a deal, which it might just be something loose or something that's making him click, I haven't really looked into it, then I'm fine. I've used him around 30 times already probably, and he's still running fine, so hopefully it's not a big deal. But if you hear that, just know that he makes a clicking sound for some reason. I'm not sure why, but we're going to get right into the activation. So as you can see, like I mentioned, absolutely amazing animation, great audio too, absolutely what you'd expect out of a scary werewolf prop. Despite his quality, I absolutely adore him. Like I said, he's one of the best props of the year in my opinion. I think, talking about the price, I think, of course he could be cheaper, but comparing it, and we're not including the quality in talking about this because it's really taking a gamble with him. So when I'm considering the price on a prop like this where it's like so hard to tell if he's gonna last or not, I don't know, I'm just not gonna include the quality in my factoring of if he's worth the price. In my opinion, comparing him to other props that are of the same price like Crouchy or Baphomet, which I have Baphomet, I think he's fantastic. I think Mr. Howle is worth the price. He's a lot, for sure. He's definitely on the higher side. However, like I said, comparing him to other ones of the price, who I think he's more worth it than them. And with a coupon, you'll be getting this guy for around $250-ish, which isn't that bad. Obviously, most people will not pay it at full price, so you're really going to be paying around $250 for this guy, which I don't think is bad. Taking into consideration his awesome animation, how he moves that much, how his mouth moves, basically his head and hands all move along with his body, and just his absolutely enormous size, I personally thought it was a good price for him. I was willing to pay it. I thought, you know, I couldn't see him being cheaper. Though I would like him to be cheaper, of course, we would all love that. I couldn't see him being cheaper, and I can understand why he was priced at this, just based on how he stands compared to other ones that are in his price range, especially if you're, as much as I love him, especially if you're comparing to something like Little Daisy and the Maestro, who's an average size prop, and the only thing that they really made him go at that price range for was the fact that he had kind of 2-in-1. Same with Harvester of Souls. I mean, I think this guy's a lot more worth it than them, despite the fact I do love them too. I think this guy's a lot more worth it. If you like him, I say go get him. I don't know if he'll be a good seller or not yet, but I'm thinking he might be, because I know he was a big promotional one for them this year on a lot of their promotional stuff. And so a lot of people might be attracted to him, especially since he's a werewolf, and werewolves are big monsters, and they're very popular ones for Halloween. I think he could be a potentially pretty good seller. So I'd say if you like him, get him while he's there, just in case. I would rate this guy overall a 9 out of 10. I would give him a 10 out of 10, but I do have to take the quality into consideration. But I think the fact that he's just so cool, it really makes up for a lot of that, but I still cannot give him a full 10 out of 10 just because of the quality. However, he's still an absolutely fantastic animatronic, and like I said, if you like him, I highly recommend you get him, because he is so cool. And I am going to say it, I'm going to say it right now, right before I end this review. Being the biggest werewolf fan there is, being known for werewolves being my favorite Halloween monsters ever, I'm going to say Mr. Howle, despite his quality, is the best werewolf prop we have ever gotten. Up until him, it was always Limb Ripper for me, but I think Mr. Howle takes the cake with his size, animation, everything. He's the scariest werewolf. I think he's the best werewolf. He is an absolutely stellar animatronic. I hope you all enjoyed this review of the best werewolf prop of all time, Mr. Howle. So, of course, keep howling at the moon, my werewolves.